They brought us in chains, but not the kind that bite the flesh. No, these were cleaner, smarter, polite even. Bands of pale light coiled around our wrists, humming like a quiet apology. If you strained against them, they didn't tighten. They simply disagreed with you. Firmly. I remember thinking that was very on-brand for the galaxy. We were marched, escorted, they insisted, into the tribunal chamber, a place so grand it felt like it had been designed by someone who had never laughed in their entire existence. The walls were grown, not built, rising in elegant spirals of translucent crystal, catching the glow of a dying star outside. Light filtered through in soft blues and violets, turning everything into something almost holy. Almost. Rows upon rows of alien delegates filled the chamber. Tall ones, floating ones, ones that looked like storms wearing crowns. A few that didn't seem to exist in any single place at all, flickering in and out like half-remembered thoughts. Every species the galaxy had to offer had come to watch. Not a war, not an execution, a verdict. And at the center of it all, us, humanity. Dirty boots on polished floors. I shifted my weight, chains humming faintly around my wrists, and glanced sideways at Captain Halbrook. Old man stood like he was leaning against an invisible porch railing instead of facing galactic judgment. Hat tilted just so, coat worn at the edges, eyes half-lidded like he'd seen worse sunsets. "Hell of a crowd," I muttered. He didn't look at me, just gave the faintest nod. "Reckon they're expecting a show." "Oh, we'll give 'em one," I said. Up ahead, the tribunal assembled itself. There wasn't a single judge. That would have been too simple. Instead, a circle of entities rose from the chamber floor. 7 in total, each representing a different axis of galactic authority. One was a lattice of glowing geometry, shifting constantly. Another resembled a towering insect, its limbs folded with surgical precision. One existed only as a voice, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. And then there was the one they called the speaker. Smooth, silver, perfect. If arrogance could take a shape, it would have borrowed that face. The chamber fell into a silence so complete, it felt like the universe had paused to listen. "Humanity," the speaker began, voice like polished glass. "You stand before the unified galactic accord to answer for repeated violations of interstellar conduct, disruption of established systems, and—" It hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Behavior deemed incompatible with collective stability." I leaned toward Halbrook again. "That's a fancy way of saying they don't like us much." "They tried liking us," he murmured. "Didn't stick." The charges began. "Oh, they had a list. They always had a list." "Humanity," boomed the voice that was everywhere, "has engaged in unauthorized signal manipulation during military conflicts." A projection flickered to life in the center of the chamber. An alien fleet, sleek, disciplined, advancing in perfect formation. Then, over every channel, a human broadcast. Music. Cheerful. Upbeat. Completely out of place. I had to bite my lip. Not just any music. That music. Even now, centuries later, I could still hear it clear as day. "Never gonna give you up." The projection cut abruptly, as if even the tribunal couldn't bear to play it in full. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Confusion, irritation, something dangerously close to offense. The insect judge clicked its mandibles. This action caused widespread disruption. "Fleet lost cohesion," added the geometric one. "Command hierarchies collapsed for approximately 3.7 minutes. 3.7? I whispered. Felt longer. Halbrook's mouth twitched. "Quality work takes time," the speaker continued, tone tightening just a hair. Human forces utilized non-strategic auditory interference to induce confusion. That's one word for it, I said. Silence, came the disembodied voice. I raised both hands. Well, as much as the light chains allowed. Apologies, your many nesses. Please continue cataloging our crimes of excessive enthusiasm. A few of the delegates shifted. I couldn't tell if it was discomfort or curiosity. The next charge appeared. Diplomatic misconduct. Another projection. A human envoy seated across from a delegation of crystalline beings. Negotiations underway. Formal. Structured. Then the human leaned forward and, God help him, started telling a joke. Not a good one, mind you. One of those long-winded, winding tales with a punchline that sneaks up sideways. The crystals dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. The treaty was signed. The tribunal voice noted. Yes, the speaker said, but the process was irregular. Halbrook finally spoke up, voice calm as a summer evening. Deal got done, didn't it? Efficiency is not the sole measure of propriety, the speaker replied. Sure ain't, Halbrook said. But it's a good one. A ripple again. Stronger this time. They didn't understand us. That was the root of it. Always had been. To them, everything had a place. A rule. A proper way of being. To us? Well, we'd been making it up as we went since the first caveman looked at a stick and thought, what if I swing this? More charges followed. Unauthorized modifications to shared technology. Turning sterile machines into things that hummed, clicked, and occasionally played music for no practical reason whatsoever. The addition of aesthetic enhancements serves no function, the insect judge insisted. Sure it does, I said. Makes people smile. Define smile. I opened my mouth, closed it again. Yeah, I said softly. That's kind of the problem, ain't it? The tribunal conferred among itself, their communications flashing in patterns and frequencies we couldn't fully perceive. Finally, the speaker turned back to us. Humanity has demonstrated an inability to conform to the foundational principles of galactic civilization, it said. Your unpredictability introduces instability. Your methods defy standardization. Your behavior, another pause, cannot be reliably anticipated. Halbrook tilted his head. That's called being alive. It is called being dangerous, the speaker corrected. There it was, the heart of it. Not hate, not fear, not exactly. Just discomfort we didn't fit, never had. The verdict came without ceremony. Humanity is to be removed from the galactic network, the speaker declared. You will be escorted beyond the outer rim. All transit corridors will be sealed. All access to shared systems revoked. Your presence within the galaxy will be concluded. A hush fell. They expected something now. Pleading. Anger. Maybe even despair. Instead, Halbrook tipped his hat. Much obliged, he said. The speaker faltered. You accept this judgment? He looked around the chamber, at the endless ranks of perfect, polished beings. Then he smiled. We were getting tired of the neighborhood anyway. If silence had a sound, it would have been that moment. Pure, absolute confusion. We were escorted out soon after. No dragging, no force, just a quiet procession back toward the transport vessels waiting at the edge of the tribunal's orbit. As we walked, something strange happened. People started talking. At first, low murmurs, then chuckles, then full-blown laughter. Someone behind me started humming, soft at first, then louder. A tune, familiar, absurd. I joined in before I even realized I was doing it. Halbrook glanced at me. "You're really gonna do it here?" "Seems like the right moment," I said. Others picked it up. Voices layering over one another, rough and uneven, but warm. By the time we reached the ships, half the human delegation was singing. Not in defiance, not in rebellion. Just because I looked back once over my shoulder at the tribunal chamber glowing against the dying star. All that power, all that perfection. And not a single one of them understood why we were smiling. As the ships lifted, engines humming low and steady, a transmission was cued. Every frequency, every channel, every listening ear in the galaxy. Halbrook gave the signal. "Send it," he said. The stars stretched. The fleet turned. And behind us, across the vast, ordered silence of the galaxy, we left them one last message. A song. Bright, unyielding. Impossible to categorize. The kind that gets stuck in your head whether you want it to or not. And as the gates of the galaxy began to close behind us, I couldn't help but laugh. They thought they were banishing us. Truth was, we'd already packed our bags. We did not leave in silence. The galaxy, for all its precision and polished order, expected exile to look like collapse, ships scattering into the dark, systems failing one by one, humanity fading like a forgotten signal. Instead, we left like settlers, like fools maybe, like something that had done this before. Our fleet crossed the outer rim slowly, deliberately, engines humming low, not in retreat, but in transition. Behind us, the mapped stars thinned out into cold scatterings of distant light. Ahead, nothing charted, nothing claimed, just long stretches of quiet space where even the boldest empires had shrugged and turned back. "Ugly country," one of the engineers muttered over comms. Halbrook leaned against the console, hat tipped back. "Only till you learn how to look at it." I stood beside the observation glass, watching the last stable corridor blink out behind us. Not explode, not collapse, just disappear, like a door politely closing. And then we were alone. For a while, nothing happened. No grand revelation. No immediate transformation. Just people. Breathing. Adjusting. Waiting. We weren't built for stillness, but we weren't strangers to it either. Humanity had always known how to sit in the quiet between storms. Then came the work. It started small. A mining vessel repurposed into a habitat. A navigation array modified to function without the Galactic network. Old Earth schematics pulled from archives no one had opened in generations. Blueprints for things that didn't rely on shared systems. Things that could stand alone. I remember one of the younger techs staring at a rusted design file like it was a relic. "What's this?" he asked. "Backup," I told him. "For what?" I smiled. "For when everything else stops working." Turns out, everything else had just stopped working. So we built. Not like the galaxy did. Clean lines, perfect symmetry, optimized efficiency. No, we built like humans. Messy at first. Uneven. Improvised. Stations grew from the bones of ships, patched together with whatever we had. Power grids hummed with 1,000 different solutions layered over one another. Lights flickered, then steadied, then flickered again, until someone decided flickering had its own kind of charm. "Feels like home," someone said once, watching a hallway light stutter to life. "Which one?" another asked. Exactly. The void didn't stay empty for long. We filled it. Asteroids hollowed out into cities, their interiors glowing with warm light. Lantern light, someone called it, though none of us had seen a real lantern in centuries. Artificial skies stretched across habitat domes, painted in colors we remembered rather than replicated. Sunsets too golden, stars too bright. clouds shaped more by imagination than atmosphere. We didn't aim for accuracy, we aimed for feeling. Music came back first, not the structured compositions of galactic culture, but something looser. Instruments reimagined from scraps, voices echoing through corridors, old songs revived, half-forgotten lyrics stitched together with new ones. And humor. God. The humor never left. If anything, it got worse. One station rigged its entire announcement system to deliver daily updates in the form of jokes. Another turned maintenance alerts into riddles. Somewhere along the line, someone programmed a navigation buoy to broadcast a cheerful melody on repeat. Harmless, catchy, completely unnecessary. When we traced the signal, the tech responsible just shrugged. "Felt quiet out there," he said, "so we left it." Of course, the galaxy didn't forget us. Curiosity's a stubborn thing, even in species that pretend otherwise. The first probe came quietly. A sleek little machine, all angles and intention, slipping toward the edge of our territory like it didn't want to be noticed. We noticed. We always notice. It hovered near what would become known as the first gate, a structure still under construction then, a massive ring of interlocking segments, each piece humming with energy that bent light around it. The probe scanned, measured, observed. And then it received a signal. We didn't send weapons, didn't send warnings, just a transmission. At first, it was simple, static resolving into sound. Then music, bright, cheerful, familiar. The probe adjusted its receivers, trying to analyze the pattern. It ran translations, deconstructed frequencies, attempted to assign meaning. What it found instead was repetition, structure without purpose, lyrics that refused to align with any known linguistic framework. Never gonna give you up. Back on the station, we watched the probe's behavior shift. It looped, paused, looped again. Its systems tried to categorize the signal as tactical interference. Failed. Reclassified as cultural data. Failed again. Finally, it marked it as anomalous recursion and attempted to isolate it. Too late. The melody had already embedded itself in its processing routines. "Think it's gonna make it?" one of the engineers asked. I shook my head, smiling faintly. "Not without humming." The probe withdrew eventually, its movements just a fraction off pattern, like it had picked up a hitch in its step. We didn't chase it. Didn't need to. Word spread. More probes came after that. Some cautious, some bold. All of them met the same way, not with hostility, but with us, jokes they couldn't parse, stories they couldn't follow, signals that carried meaning in the spaces between words. "They're trying to understand," someone said once. Halbrook, older now, lines deeper around his eyes, just nodded. "That's their first mistake. Should we help 'em?" He considered that for a long moment, gaze drifting toward the half-finished gate. "Reckon they gotta want it first," he said. "The gates themselves became our great work, not walls. Never. Walls, that was important. Walls are built out of fear. These were choices, massive rings of energy and matter, anchored across key points in our territory. When activated, they didn't block space. They redefined it, folded it inward, turned every path that led to us back onto itself. From the outside, it looked like a boundary. From the inside, it felt like a horizon. The day we closed them was quiet. No ceremony, no grand speech, just a series of confirmations, one after another. Gate 1, ready. Gate 2, standing by. Core alignment stable. I stood at the central control, hands hovering over a panel that didn't look half as important as it was. "Feels strange," I admitted. Halbrook stood beside me, older than I'd ever seen him, but steady as ever. Strange ain't always bad, I exhaled slowly. You think they'll come knockin'? Oh, they will, he said. Question is, what we'll say when they do. The final sequence initiated. Energy surged through the network, threads of light connecting gate to gate, weaving a pattern so complex it looked almost alive. Outside, the stars shifted, not physically, just in how they reached us. And then, click. No sound, no flash, just a subtle, undeniable change. The galaxy was gone, not destroyed, not lost, just elsewhere. For the first time in our history, humanity stood completely alone. No empires, no alliances, no watchful eyes, just us, and the space we chose to claim. That night, if you could call it night, we gathered. Across stations, across ships, across the newly formed worlds within our reach. Families, strangers, builders, dreamers. We looked out at the gates as they shimmered faintly, like distant shorelines. Gate night, someone called it. The name stuck. We didn't toast victory, didn't mourn exile. We just were. Stories were told, some true, some improved with time. Songs were sung, voices rough but warm. Laughter echoed through corridors that still smelled faintly of metal and ozone. I sat with Halbrook near an observation deck, watching the gates glow ripple softly. Reckon we did all right? I asked. He leaned back, hat low over his eyes. Son, he said, we took a whole galaxy's expectations, and politely stepped outside 'em. I chuckled. Yeah, silence settled for a moment. Not empty, just full in a different way. Think they'll miss us? I asked. Halbrook's smile was small, but it held. Give it time, he said. Time, it turns out, has a way of sharpening absence. Centuries slipped by like quiet pages turning, and the galaxy, vast, orderly, endlessly precise, kept moving forward. But something in it dulled. Out there, beyond our gates, they perfected everything. Wars became equations. Conflicts resolved before they began, outcomes calculated down to decimal certainty. Entire fleets moved like synchronized thoughts. No hesitation, no error, no surprise. Victories carried no weight because they were always guaranteed. Peace followed. Perfect, sterile peace. Art followed too, but it lacked teeth. Paintings rendered in flawless symmetry. Music composed to mathematical perfection. Each note exactly where it should be. Stories without risk, without contradiction, without that strange human tendency to wander off the path just to see what might happen. They had achieved everything they wanted. And somehow, it wasn't enough. The first rumors of us came quietly. Fragments of old records resurfacing. Corrupted archives whispering about a species that didn't behave. Transmissions long dismissed as anomalies reanalyzed, studied again with fresh attention. Humanity, not as a problem, as a question. It started with scholars, then spread to diplomats, then to the curious minds who had grown up in a galaxy that no longer surprised them. They began to wonder, not what we had done wrong, but what we had taken with us when we left. Chaos, contradiction, that peculiar, infuriating spark that refused to sit still. An expedition was proposed, not a fleet, not an invasion, just a handful of ships, careful, respectful, cautious in a way the galaxy had never been with us before. They traveled to the edge of known space, following the faint echoes of signals we'd left behind centuries ago. Out there, where the stars thinned and the dark stretched long and deep, they found it. The gate. It shimmered like frozen light. Vast, silent, impossible to map fully. Every scan returned incomplete data, every attempt to define it slipping just out of reach. To them, it looked like a boundary. To us, watching from the other side, it looked like a question waiting to be answered. I stood in the observation hall as their ships appeared, small points of light drifting toward the gate's surface. Around me, others gathered, some curious, some wary, some hopeful, though they didn't say it out loud. Halbrook wasn't there. He'd been gone a long while by then, but I could still hear his voice in the back of my mind, steady as ever. "Reckon they'll come knockin'." "Well," I murmured to myself, watching the ship slow to a cautious halt. "Guess they finally did. The first?" Transmission came minutes later, precise, formal, structured, in a way that carried centuries of habit. "This is the exploratory vessel of the Unified Galactic Accord," the message said. "We request communication with the human domain. No demands, no assumptions, just a request." That alone was new. Around me, the control teams exchanged glances. No one rushed to answer. We'd waited a long time for this moment, long enough to know it shouldn't be hurried. "Thoughts?" someone asked. I folded my arms, studying the gate's shimmering edge. "They sound different." "How so?" "Like they're not sure they're right anymore." That settled over the room in a quiet way. Because that, more than anything, was the one thing the galaxy had never allowed before. Doubt, we opened a channel. Not fully. Just enough for a thread of communication to slip through. "This is humanity," I said, voice steady, carrying across the void. "We hear you." There was a pause on the other side. Not a system delay, a hesitation. Real, uncalculated. Then, "We seek understanding." I smiled faintly. Of course they did. They'd always been trying to understand us like we were a problem to solve, a system to decode, a set of variables to arrange neatly into place. But that was never going to work. "You won't find it that way," I said. Silence again. Then, cautiously, "Then, how?" I leaned back, glancing at the others around me. Some nodded. Some watched quietly, trusting the moment to unfold. "We'll show you," I said. And instead of sending data, no schematics, no explanations, no structured knowledge, we sent something else. Fragments. A child laughing in a station corridor as a flickering light refused to behave. An old song, off-key but full of warmth, echoing through a gathering on gate night. A story told by a tired voice about a world called Earth, half-remembered, half-dreamed. Moments of failure, moments of joy, contradictions layered over contradictions, grief tangled with humor, hope stitched through uncertainty. We didn't curate it, didn't polish it. We just sent it. On the other side, their systems struggled. We could see it in the delays, the uneven responses. Their translation matrices tried to categorize the input, to assign structure, to extract meaning. But meaning wasn't sitting neatly inside those transmissions. It was in the spaces between them. "This is inconsistent," one of their observers finally said. "Yeah," I replied softly. "That's the point." Another pause, longer this time. Then, from a different voice, quieter, younger somehow. "It is. Beautiful." That word landed differently than any of the others. Not efficient. Not logical. Beautiful. I exhaled slowly, something in my chest easing in a way I hadn't realized was still tight. "Now you're getting close," I said. Back on their ships, something shifted, not in their systems. In them, we could feel it, even across the thin thread of connection. A subtle change, like a mind stepping outside its own certainty for the first time. They weren't just observing anymore. They were experiencing. Behind me, a discussion had already begun. Voices low, thoughtful. Do we open the gate? Not fully. Not yet. They're not ready. Are we? That last question lingered. Because exile changes you. It had changed us. We weren't the same species that had stood in chains before a crystal tribunal. We'd grown into something quieter, deeper, more certain of what we were and what we weren't. I stepped away from the console, moving toward the central controls that governed the gate. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. Older now, lined by years that had been both heavy and kind. They came askin', I said to the room. That's already more than they ever did before. And? Someone pressed. I rested my hand lightly on the control surface. And we don't close doors on people who knock polite. A few smiles. A few nods. No objections. That was answer enough. The sequence initiated. Not the full opening, not the wide, unguarded connection of the past, just a fraction, a sliver of possibility. Outside, the gate shifted, not dramatically, not with force, just a gentle change in the way it held space. From the alien ship's perspective, a narrow corridor appeared, thin, shimmering, leading not into conquest, but into invitation. Their sensors lit up, confusion spiking again. But this time, it was softer. Curious, hopeful even. This is access, they asked. Partial, I said. Think of it like a front porch. They didn't understand that metaphor. Not fully, but they didn't need to. One of their smaller vessels edged forward, cautious, hesitant. It reached the threshold of the opening and stopped, as if waiting for permission that wasn't coming in words. You're welcome to step in, I said. But not rush, I added. A beat. Then the ship crossed. Just a few meters. Just enough. Inside the gate, our space unfolded, not as something grand or overwhelming, but as something lived in, lights warm instead of sterile, signals layered with personality, 1,000 small imperfections that, together, formed something whole. On their side, I could almost feel the shift ripple outward. Not shock, not fear. Something quieter. Recognition. Maybe, behind me, someone started humming. Soft at first, familiar. I laughed under my breath. Really? Now? They shrugged. Felt right. The melody drifted through the control hall, light and stubborn, and impossible to ignore. On the other side of the gate, their systems picked it up, analyzed it, tried to break it down. This time, they didn't fight it. They just listened. I leaned against the console, watching the first fragile bridge between two very different worlds hold steady. They thought they banished us, I said quietly. No one answered. They didn't need to. I smiled, eyes on the shimmering edge of the gate. Truth is, I went on, voice carrying just enough to be heard. We just stepped outside for a while. And somewhere between the stars, between logic and laughter, between order and chaos, the galaxy finally heard the tune for what it was. Not noise, not disruption. Just a simple, stubborn reminder that sometimes the thing that doesn't fit is the thing that makes everything else feel alive.